Hey everyone, I'm Jeff Wall, joined by my Pick Six podcast host, Nolan Kangas. Nolan, how are you, buddy?
Not too bad, man. We made it through. The draft's finally over, so that was fun. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. You're right. It was a really exciting draft. There was a lot going on there. In all honesty, I think it was pretty entertaining. It went pretty well. I think even Roger Goodell was pretty entertaining. I thought it was interesting how they did, the cross ESPN and NFL Network sort of thing that they had going on there. Overall, I thought they did a pretty good job, and the teams for the most part didn't seem like they had many hiccups at all. So yeah, it went pretty smooth.
I was honestly shocked. I think everyone was worried that, hackers were going to come on Zoom and all that stuff. And it didn't really seem like there was many glitches. I guess my only complaint was, yeah, I believe the first 10 picks took an hour and a half. I think that was kind of the only issue is how long every pick was taking, but no glitches, not many hiccups. I thought, they did a really good job.
Yeah. There was the only thing realistically. It kind of dragged. Like there was a bit of, I guess, some pauses or some kind of something like that. But overall, I think the teams made it as interesting as they could have. It was a really good draft. But for this, we're going to start with the North, and then we're going to work our way down to the South teams for our draft grade series here for this week at Lingo Sports. We're going to start with the teams in both the AFC and NFC North. The NFC North that hosts both our teams, my Chicago Bears and Nolan's Minnesota Vikings. And they both made quite a bit of headlines as well. And Nolan, let's start on a positive note then. Let's start with your Minnesota Vikings, who had probably one of the best drafts out of all 32 teams. Would you agree with that?
I think so, Jeff. They absolutely killed it. And I don't think Justin Jefferson, who ended up being their number one pick, was even on their board. They thought he was going to be long gone. So that was a steal at number 22. And you think of in the first round, they trade back, acquire more picks, and at 31 get Jeff Gladney. And I love me some Jeff Gladney. He's a physical corner, and he's really going to fit kind of that mold of what Mike Zimmer wants. He wants that aggressive corners, and they drafted a couple more too. Cameron Dantzler. It was an interesting pick, but he had a really good game against LSU, and I think that was something that they liked because Rick Spielman and Zimmer like when players play really well in big time games. He's a little bit leaner, but I even thought in that second round, Ezra Cleveland, I had him in a first round grade. I actually had him going to the Browns in the first round. Sort of, that was them trading back, and of course we all saw Andrew Thomas was the first tackle taken, and tackles started falling down the board. So I thought there was a chance Cleveland could squeeze in there. He falls all the way to Minnesota. So they needed that. And I think, checking their, the boxes, their needs coming into this was a corner for sure. They lost Mackenzie Alexander, Trey Waynes, Xavier Rhodes. They hit on that. They got Gladney, they got Dantzler. Wide receiver, you lose Stephon Diggs. Okay, how about Justin Jefferson, who's probably the third or fourth best receiver in this class? They hit on the O-line. I think they had a terrific draft. And again, they added more pieces to the puzzle, which will come in 2021. 15 picks in this draft. They have, I believe, the most already in 2021. So, all around, if I'm giving a grade to my Vikings, not trying to be biased, I'd give them an A. I think they killed it.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Nolan. I gave them an A as well. I mean, it's tough to give any team an A plus, but man, they really did a great job, to add to what is already a really talented roster. Just to go through it, I mean, the only few complaints I really would have had is maybe I would have taken Josh Jones or Cushenberry in the second or third rounds there. Those guys were kind of falling, and maybe you could argue that those guys were better, but the Vikings liked Ezra Cleveland, so they took him instead. As for Justin Jefferson, man, I mean, he really fills that Stephon Diggs shaped hole that Minnesota has left there. And, he has the potential to be, in my eyes, just as good, if not better, than Diggs was there. And then also, you get Jeff Gladney, and now they've really started to fill the holes in the roster and maybe become an even stronger team than they were last year. So I really love what they did. And, like you said, so many picks there. And they're really starting to stack things up. The Vikings really, they filled a lot of their needs to keep themselves in contention, maybe to win the NFC North this coming year as well.
I think so. Obviously, we'll get to some of the picks other teams in the North made, especially, ones that Green Bay made, which were questionable. But I think it really helps the Vikings. Their needs were corner because they were really limited. They needed some depth. They hit on that. I think one of the question marks was who's going to replace Everson Griffin? They don't have him anymore. So it ends up being in the 4th round, DJ One-Ohm, the edge rusher out of South Carolina. And I think a lot of people thought that was higher than he thought he should have gone. But when you look at how the Vikings have drafted their edge rushers, Everson Griffin, I believe he was a 4th rounder too, ends up being a 4-time or 5-time Pro Bowler. And now Daniil Hunter, a 3rd rounder. Maybe that was a little earlier than what people thought a couple of years back. And I believe he hit 50 sacks before the age of 25. And I don't think anybody's done that in NFL history. So the Vikings know how to scout edge rushers. And I think they got a couple solid ones in this draft too.
Now, as for the Chicago Bears, they had a very limited amount of picks, especially in rounds 1 to 4. And looking at their needs, look, I don't know if they filled them that well. But just right off the top, I'm gonna give them a C+. And that's mostly, and honestly, the reason why it's so high is mostly due to how much I like Jalen Johnson as a cornerback. He was one of the top prospects, at least at that position, and I was surprised to see him fall so far. I think that could be seen as some mistakes on other teams' parts, and I think we will see that. But the other reason that it's kind of lower too is how they didn't really work the board well. Like, they didn't trade back, which I thought that they probably should have and could have done within reason there. As for Johnson, though, you got a guy who's got all the physical tools. He's long, he's athletic, he's got good ball skills. He's a really smart guy who apparently is a film junkie. And obviously he's not perfect, but I think he can be, maybe in a few years, a much better Prince Amukamara, better than he ever was in Chicago, which was some of his best years. But the Cole Kmet move, I mean, really, like most Bears fans, I think it's where it absolutely blew up. I mean, come on, you got Jimmy Graham in the offseason for a reason. I understand Kmet's looking, that's more of a futuristic kind of looking move, which is smart. The Bears haven't really done that in past years. They've been looking in the now, and I don't think that's always going to work out. For me, one of the big things with this is tight end was not their biggest need. One of their biggest needs, especially offensively, was wide receiver, especially a deep threat one. And the worst part about this, Nolan, is that they passed on guys. There was some great guys on the board like a Chase Claypool, Denzel Mims, KJ Hamler, all these guys that could help you push the ball deep, which helps the quarterback that you just invested in, Nick Foles, who's more of a deep passer anyway. At least that's his strength. On top of that, does Kmet fit in their offense? He's more of a wide tight end, not a U. He can't really, he's not a very athletic guy. He's really almost like an unathletic younger version of Jimmy Graham in a lot of ways, to be honest with you. That's the way I see his game. I didn't even have him as my top tight end, although a lot of people did. Tight end was also the weakest position in this entire draft. And to take him that high, to me, you're really lacking a lot of foresight there, and that he probably wasn't going to get taken there. He may have even been taken in the 3rd round. Not only that, you just see, realistically, they pick Kmet over Jalen Johnson as well. And then you go into the defensive side of the ball where you kind of, and this pick, this first pick that they had in the 2nd round, this is where a lot of the safeties started to go. Literally right after them, they lost Grant Delpit, they lost Antoine Winfield Jr., and then they could have had Jeremy Chin as a safety that can, cover a guy and also, hit somebody in the box, and I'm definitely going, I believe that you should go.
You know what? I had similar grades and similar thoughts too. I actually had a B-. I like the Jalen Johnson pick. I don't know why he fell to the 2nd. The Cole Kmet pick is interesting because to me, it almost seems like Chicago doesn't know whether they're building for the future or if they think they're a win now team. Because if you're building for the future with a pick like Kmet, you think he's going to overtake Jimmy Graham eventually. And then if you're thinking that, why didn't you take a quarterback? You have Nick Foles and Mitchell Trubisky. And there were some quarterbacks that fell quite a bit. I think maybe a Jacob Eason was falling, which was interesting to me at least. Anthony Gordon ended up being, I believe he was picked up as a free agent, which is wild. And a lot of people actually had him going 5th, 6th round. So they didn't address that need. And you're right. I think offensive line, I think they could have taken one earlier. They picked a lineman, Arlington Hambright, in the 7th round. A little questionable for me. And so that was certainly interesting, but you're right. I think the Jalen Johnson pick kind of helps out a little bit. But once they saw the safeties kind of falling in that 2nd round, you said they should have traded back to get more picks. At that is one of your biggest needs. I would have traded up to try and get one of those guys, or at least take Jeremy Chin. But you're right. They answered a little bit on defense. Their offense, are you going to do 2 tight end sets with Graham and Kmet? I don't really know. So the identity and I guess kind of what's going to be moving forward for the Chicago, I don't really understand. But, somehow it wasn't the worst grade we could give in this division.
Yeah, I think at least you can say with Johnson there is you are trying to they're building on their strength. They're building on like what should be a very good pass
Yeah.
defense. And that's the least I could say. And I think he will be pretty good. But now we got to move to the guys that you and me both don't have a lot of love for. The Green Bay Packers, who made a lot of headlines on day one when they took Jordan Love. Green Bay Packers, on top of all of that, they didn't really fill a lot of needs that we had in mind for them. And they also missed on a few valuable players. Nolan, what were your thoughts on that?
You know what? It was, and I don't want to sound harsh, but it was probably the worst draft that we saw over the weekend. And I think the Jordan Love move is a move for the future. And, trade up to get him, you're either telling Aaron Rodgers something like, hey, you got to pick it up, because we know Aaron Rodgers is probably a top 6, top 7 quarterback in football right now. But the fact that, your team traded up for a guy like this and you were a game away from the Super Bowl, that to me was really interesting. But it wasn't the worst pick they had. It was A.J. Dillon in the second round. Definitely wasn't on my board at all as running backs. He's 250 pounds, and he had 800 touches at Boston College. He had 21 catches in 3 years. You already have Aaron Jones, so I think is a vastly underrated player. So to go take a guy in the second round, there were so many receivers on the board. Why didn't they grab a wideout, which Aaron Rodgers has been begging for? So you're really relying on Devontae Adams, great receiver. Obviously, we know that. Devin Funchess, what is his situation there? He's been, I believe he missed 15 games last year for the Colts. Signs of 1 year with the Packers. You have a lot of trust in Alan Lazard to be the third guy moving forward. And then the tight end in the third round, when I put on my board, I put, red if it was a questionable pick and green if it was a solid pick. I didn't know what to put for the tight end because I actually read reports that they kind of want to use him sort of as a fullback, like a Kyle Juszczyk. So why would you take a guy like that in the third round, even when there was potentially better tight ends on the board? All over this Green Bay, draft was very, very odd. If I were to give one bright spot, the John Runyon pick, they needed a guard to fill the hole of Brian Bulaga. So I thought that was okay. And a lot of these Michigan offensive linemen have been falling a lot, and they were actually pretty solid. It was more the running backs who couldn't contribute as much for the Wolverines. So I didn't mind that pick, but the first two for a team that was a game away from the Super Bowl, and you realize, okay, we need ways to maybe slow down that 49ers pass rusher. Hey, we need to find more speed and more weapons to get past those DBs. You didn't answer any of that. So for me, the grade was a D. And I think the only reason why it wasn't an F is because I liked, the picking up Runyon and Kamal Martin in the 5th round. They needed a linebacker as well. So I thought that was a pretty solid pick. But, Jeff, it was pretty bad for the Pack.
Yeah, it was pretty bad for them. And I think that will actually cause them to lose the division to maybe one or both of these two teams here that we're representing here on this right here. I think overall, though, I did like the Love move. I thought someone had to take him, and I thought that he is a project. I think that's clear. And I think that similar to Aaron Rodgers, he's in a very similar situation. They're going to try and build him almost the exact same way. And I think, at best, he could be, I'm not going to say he's going to be as good as Aaron Rodgers. Even I can accept that Aaron Rodgers is a great all-time quarterback. But I think he has a lot of similar skill sets. They can build him in that way. And I think it's a great pick for the future. And at the very worst with Jordan Love, you're getting some good draft capital for years in the future. And Aaron Rodgers hasn't exactly been the most solid quarterback in the world. He can get injured from time to time, which means he'll see the field, which is good, both good for him and good for the Packers. But then, the thing that really killed you is exactly what you said there. Getting the running back there in the second round when you said, like you said, man, so many good receivers on the board. Nothing against A.J. Dillon. As with all these picks, we hope that these guys have great careers, but it's just not at all what you need to do. And I agree, Devin Funchess, to me, even as a second option, I don't trust that. I think this is a bad one. I'll go with the C. C minus. Let's go with a C minus because I just think that they really didn't help them. And hey, usually there's always some pick that's a diamond in the rough that we didn't see. But overall, I can't see a lot of good moves. This was a pretty bad draft, especially, like you said, Nolan, after being so close to that Super Bowl title right there in Green Bay.
We might end up being wrong with the grade there. Just for me, you're right. Jordan Love, it's a project, and I think it is solid for the future. But I could have seen them move and actually been completely fine with it if this was, say, a 9-7 team last year. They were 13-3. So to me, it was just a little questionable. I think Jordan Love could end up being a really solid pro. So I actually wonder eventually, hey, if Aaron Rodgers keeps playing damn well until, say, his 40s, does it become maybe a Jimmy Garoppolo situation and end up trading him and getting some picks? I think potentially, depending on Aaron Rodgers' health, we could eventually see something like that too.
I definitely think so. I think that is kind of how the Packers are looking at it, but I think you can't squander a window like this that you do have, especially, Aaron Rodgers the last 2 years or so has not looked amazing. Maybe that's why they made the pick, but only time will tell. Now we got to go with the team that was dead last, and seems like they were pretty much always dead last in the NFC North, and that is the Detroit Lions, who reportedly wanted out of that number 3 spot overall in the first round. They end up taking Jeff Okudah, which in my eyes was a pretty good pick. Overall, the picks they made, I think I like a lot of them. I think the biggest thing is it signals a bit of a change in their approach, at least on one side of the ball. I'm going to give them a B. I think it was a solid draft. Obviously, the Lions had one of the worst pass defenses in almost every single statistic in the NFL last year. And as Matt Patricia probably thinks of himself as a defensive maestro and wants to show that, because all the NFL really thought that he was that, he's going to want to up the ante on that side of the ball. Jeff Okudah, great pick there, obviously. Pairing him with Trufant. We'll see if Trufant can rebound in that spot, who will really be the number 1 corner. I think it should be Jeff Okudah. But either way, I think that's one thing. And the other side of it, though, is the 3 picks that really symbolize a change in their philosophy. And that is DeAndre Swift at the top of the second round, and then back-to-back picks with 2 offensive guards, Jonah Jackson and Logan Stenberg, to their guards. And I think, Swift is a great do-it-all back. I think he should probably start over Kerryon Johnson, if not split carries. I also like that he didn't get a lot of, he wasn't worked into the ground over at Georgia, which is great. Great for him in his career. And then you got like Stenberg and Jackson, who are the big maulers that can add a lot of toughness to the team. And I think when you put that all together, it's clear that the Lions want to control the tempo. They want to control the clock. They want to keep the other offenses off the field and dictate that way, and also maybe open up some things for their passing game, which has kind of been limited. And really, I think it's just showing that they're trying to control those good offenses that are in the NFC North, mostly with the Vikings and the Packers, obviously, and then allow their defense to be as ready to go as they can be every snap of the ball that they get. And I think that they've actually made some good strides to do that.
You're right, Jeff. I agree with you. I think this was a really solid draft for the Lions. The first pick, I could have gone Derek Brown. I think he's more of a game changer on that defensive line than Okudah, where you trade away Darius Slay and then you bring in another corner. Yeah, he's cheaper. You have to assume he's going to be better eventually than what Darius Slay was. You have to think he has a better ceiling than what Slay has in order for this pick to sort of end up working out. But I think he was the best corner available, and they needed a corner. So why not reach that need? I love the DeAndre Swift pick. And you're completely right? He wasn't Jonathan Taylor getting like 890 carries, right? He wasn't A.J. Dillon. He, really didn't have too many touches. And we didn't really see a lot of flashes at Georgia. Maybe that was because of the offense. But, man, I think he could be potentially a 10, 11, 12-year guy in the NFL. That's just with his skill set. He's going to bring sort of a style of what Reggie Bush had when he played for the Detroit Lions. I think he's the last 1,000-yard rusher that the Lions, had, and that was ages ago, it seems. So I like that pick. I think he should start over Kerryon Johnson because Kerryon Johnson, can't seem to stay healthy. Love the Jonah Jackson pick as well. I think they were meeting all of the needs. For me, the pick I probably like the most is actually Quintez Cephas, a wide receiver out of Wisconsin. And I actually read up, Jeffrey Okudah said he was the toughest guy he covered all year. So you get a guy like that in the 5th round. I know you already have Kenny Galladay, Marvin Jones, and Danny Amendola. I think he's already better than Geronimo Allison. So he'll be that 4th guy. And with, Amendola's age, he'll fit in eventually. He's a really nice wide receiver. The numbers maybe don't show, on the college level, but I think he's pretty solid. I gave him a B+. I think they had a really solid draft there in Detroit.
Yeah, I agree. I think they've made some good strides there. Still a lot of work to do to cover the ground, especially in this division. It's a very competitive one. But I think this is the biggest thing I think for Matt Patricia. I think he'll like to hear is I think this pretty much keeps him in a job for at least another year or two. And hopefully they can kind of move towards what his vision is with this team. And we've seen that with a lot of Bill Belichick disciples. We're going to take a quick back, and then we'll be right back with the AFC North teams. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying this video. But please make sure to like and share it with your friends. And of course, subscribe to Lingo Sports. Now, back to the video. All right, we're back now with the AFC North. We got to start off, though, Nolan, with the Cincinnati Bengals, the team with the number 1 overall pick. And Nolan, you got to get this one started. How did they do?
I think that the Bengals had a pretty good draft, and I think Joe Burrow was the obvious pick. We knew that coming in. It was what they were going to do after that. So I think they answered their linebacker question. Logan Wilson, Akeem Davis-Gaither out of Appalachian State. Those were 2 good picks at 3 and 4. The second round pick, T. Higgins, he was falling because of his combine numbers and what he did at his pro day. I really like T. Higgins. I think he's going to be better than John Ross on that roster. So what I think Zach Taylor is building is something similar to Kansas City. Is you have your quarterback of the future. You have all the weapons surrounding him. So let's just see what he can do. Can he perform at what he did at the college level? There's no way he's putting up 60 touchdowns, but I think it gives him a little bit more comfort to say, if you go to a team like Miami, you already have a bad O-line. You don't really have many running backs. And the weapons, you have Devontae Parker and a bunch of other players. Unlike here, he gets A.J. Green, Tyler Boyd. I like T. Higgins. All right, if you want John Ross to stretch the field, that works too. The one complaint I have with this is the offensive line. We don't know how this offensive line is going to be. I don't think it's a good one. Again, it's going to be a question because we didn't really see how much Jonah Williams played last year. He was banged up. He was their first overall, or well, not first overall, but first round pick in that last year draft out of Alabama. So how is he going to be? They only hit Akeem Edgy from Kansas in the 6th round. So that's my big question mark. I gave them a B+ because, one, you took Joe Burrow. So you have your quarterback of the future who's hopefully going to be there for a decade plus. And then T. Higgins, who's a really solid receiver to help build this offense. I think they met some of the needs, quarterback, linebacker, and receiver. We didn't see them take a tight end. So that was a little interesting. But moving forward, we'll see how the Bengals do. I think this is a solid team. I don't think there's any way they're drafting in the top 5 next year, which, maybe call me a liar, but you got a good offense. If A.J. Green is healthy, this is going to be a pretty solid offense. It's what is going to happen on that defensive side, and that's where they spend most of their money in free agency.
Yeah, and I think that they filled up a lot of holes in free agency as well. I mean, you look at all the names there. They did a good job of making sure that they don't fall too far behind, and that Joe Burrow is not having to throw the ball with an offensive line that we really don't know the status of. I'm going to give them a B-. I thought it was a solid draft. Not many holes you could pick, and they didn't do a lot wrong. There maybe is some things that they could have done better, but either way, I mean, they picked Joe Burrow first overall, so it's a good start. You didn't mess up the first overall pick there. They had a weapon for him right away in T. Higgins, which was exactly what they needed to do. And obviously, too, we don't know how much longer A.J. Green's going to be on that team and how much more do you want to pay him in the year's future. And plus, it's also a good mentor for a guy who has had some issues in college. I do wonder how T. Higgins, though, will adapt to the NFL, because I do think he's faster than what the 40 times they've shown at both his pro day and the combine. I'm not sure if he actually ran one there, but either way, they were both 4 times. And I just wonder how's he going to adapt to the NFL. I think based on his size, based on his great hands, I think he's going to be more of a red zone target. I think that is where he could actually kind of help A.J. Green and kind of take the tough contested catches away from where he can kind of get hurt. You add that to the team. I think that's a good idea. I just think that maybe there is a few receivers that I kind of like better on the board, namely like a guy like Chase Claypool. And I know you don't love him, but a Denzel Mims, I think, is a faster, more athletic version of T. Higgins. And yeah, sure, you could argue the pedigree of Clemson is pretty great as well, though. So overall, not a lot wrong, but I agree that, there are some issues there. But I think as well with the offensive line, I don't think there is that many great offensive linemen in this draft in total. So maybe that's why a lot of teams didn't end up going for them. But now we'll go for their Ohio rivals, the Cleveland Browns, who had all the hype in the world going into last season, and they may have a lot of hype all over again. I thought this was a really good draft. I'm going to go with an A here, Nolan, for the Cleveland Browns. Maybe one of the better drafts we've seen as well, along with the Minnesota Vikings. They filled a lot of needs, and they got some great steals as well, especially in the later rounds. And I think they got probably the best offensive linemen in Jedrick Wills. You know, they must have loved to see a bunch of offensive linemen, all those, the tackles falling towards them. They got pretty much their pick of all what most people's top ones were, and they get Jedrick Wills, who I think is probably the best one and the most pro-ready one to go along with Jack Conklin. I mean, come on, like that should be a good offensive line, enough to help Baker Mayfield. And then on the defensive side of the ball, right away, Grant Delpit, right after the Bears took Kmet, which I'm not going to get over for a long time. You get Grant Delpit, who's a guy that I think can help cover great tight ends in that division, like Mark Andrews, like Eric Ebron. So I think that was an awesome pick, and if he fixes his tackling issues, I think you got a Pro Bowler on your hands, because he did a lot of great stuff back in the 2018 season, did Delpit. And then a steal in the later rounds, you got Harrison Bryant, you know, the Mackey Award winner. Obviously, he's not the most athletic guy, but he's got great hands. He's tough as hell. And, you know, I think that's a stacked tight end room. And now you got your pick between him and Njoku for the future to go along with Austin Hooper, who they just got in free agency. Then a guy who falls to the 6th, and I kind of don't know how. Maybe it was because of production issues, was Donovan Peoples-Jones. I thought he was an amazing receiver at Michigan, and yeah, maybe didn't live up to the hype that he had coming out of high school, but he adds a different dimension. You know, he's a bigger guy than Landry or OBJ. He can go and get those contested catches, and he can give you something in the kick return game. So overall, I thought the Browns were absolutely killing it in this one.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there, Jeff. I had an A as well. I think the only question marks I have is, you know, you hit the offensive tackle, you got Jedrick Wills. And I think initially they thought maybe they'd get Andrew Thomas. He obviously goes 4th. Wills slides to them. You have to be confident he's going to be able to play left tackle. Conklin's staying on the right side. Jedrick Wills played on the right side at Alabama. I think something that is maybe comforts them a little bit is Wills was protecting to his blind side. So now he slides over to the left and he'll be protecting Baker's blind side. So maybe that helps out a little bit, but he's going to have to learn that. Delpit, solid pick, good leader. That safety position, there's some depth there with Carl Joseph, who's going to be more of the tackler on this defense, because we know Delpit has some tackling issues. I like the Jordan Elliott pick. You mentioned Harrison Bryant and Donovan Peoples-Jones. I had a green check mark right there. A steal. I think that fits the depth. And you're right. When it comes to a red zone, he's a big body guy, right? Odell's going to be double covered. Austin Hooper's probably going to be double covered. Jarvis Landry is great in the red zone, but sometimes he's not going to get open. There's another weapon right there for you. All right. So I think this was a really solid job by the Browns. The only question mark, and I probably would have given them an A+, honestly, if they hit on this, is they needed more linebackers. And I don't think they did that. They got Jacob Phillips out of LSU. So that's another big school guy. He was taught well, obviously being a national champion, but I probably would have liked to see them take a linebacker earlier. That was my only concern, but the Browns, you know, had a hell of a draft. I think they're definitely going to be better next season.
Absolutely. I think another team that might also be a good amount better is the Baltimore Ravens, who can really push for some Super Bowl contention. It seems like every single year these guys get some great deals in the draft. Nolan, how did you grade this one?
I had 5 players in this draft with a green check mark. They killed it. They did a really good job, Jeff. I gave him an A. Patrick Queen, I think we're going to see where Isaiah Simmons plays. He arguably could end up being the best linebacker in this class. He's an absolute stud. So they got him. You get J.K. Dobbins, another running back. He's more of a home run hitter, whereas DeAndre Swift can more do it all, right? And same with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, right? So I think Dobbins is going to fit well with this offense. They're going to do a lot of stuff with him, a lot of stuff with Mark Ingram. We already know what Lamar Jackson can do. I know you really liked Justin Matabuki out of Texas A&M, the tackle there. So he fills the need of Michael Pierce, him and Calais Campbell right there on that D-line. That's scary. Devin Duvernay, a steal as well at wide receiver. We know they struggled in that playoff game against the Titans getting wide receivers, so they get one there. And the other guy I gave a green check mark was another O-liner from Michigan, Ben Bredesen. So I think he's going to fill that hole of Marshall Yanda. They filled most of their needs here, Jeff. It's just going to be, can they put it all together in the playoffs? I think it comes realistically down to them or Kansas City in the AFC. I don't even think it's close.
I would agree, and they did a really good job making sure it's not close. I gave them an A, and somehow they addressed both their needs and complemented their strengths as well. I mean, we've seen what they've done in free agency, stacking up that defensive line there. You talked about him, Justin Madubuike. It's like they never want to get run on again. They're never going to allow Derrick Henry to get more than 30 yards if he ever plays them again, and which I'm sure he will. And then on top of that, you get Patrick Queen, to hit him in the mouth if he ever gets there as well. He was being docked a little bit because of his size, supposedly, and he sounds like he's ready to go and prove everybody wrong about that. And just going back on Madubuike, the biggest thing with that defensive line, it's a stacked room there, but they're kind of heading towards the end of their careers. They're all sort of in and around their 30s, so he had some youth there as well. And like you said, Devin Duvernay, able to stretch the field. And it really just sets up Lamar Jackson, that offense, to do, some great things, with the ability to run out of the backfield. They've got way too many running backs to even count at this point. I think they did a great job.
Yeah, I think the J.K. Dobbins, it's going to be interesting when we talk about, who's going to be offensive rookie of the year and stuff. He's in a good position to be, up for that award. You think if Mark Ingram gets banged up, which he did near the end of the season last year, he's a pretty solid guy to fill a hole there. If he's doing the read option with Lamar, watch out.
Definitely. Now, finally, the last one we're going to do here for this episode is the Steelers draft class. And to be honest, it was a little bit hit or miss. Their defense was one of the best in the league last year, but they needed some help in key areas on the offense. I'll start off with saying, I gave them a C+, so not a great draft. They did hit on one, though, and I've been talking about him leading up to this point. The BC native, Chase Claypool. I mean, this is a freak athlete, Nolan, out of Notre Dame, 6'4", nearly 240 pounds. He's practically a tight end, but he runs, in the low 4.4. So he's obviously a great receiver, but I think a lot of people missed on him. And he's not just athletic, he can run routes, he can go up and get the contested catches as well. He's got great body control for his size, which is just crazy. He's kind of in that Calvin Johnson mold. We'll see if he gets even close to that kind of lofty potential there. But, he I don't think he's a tight end. I definitely think he's a receiver. And I think in a lot of other drafts, he's a first rounder. Absolutely, for sure. And I think the only reason he fell to the second round is because it was simply that stacked. The biggest issue, though, for me was I think they needed a backup for Big Ben. He's had a lot of trouble staying healthy over these last couple of years. And so I think they needed a good backup quarterback. So if he does go down, this team can actually contend for a playoff spot. Because I think without him and with the offense not having a good backup quarterback, they really struggled last year when they maybe shouldn't have.
Yeah, and so I love the Claypool pick, and I wonder how they're going to fit him into this offense, because you already have Juju Smith-Schuster, you already have Deontay Johnson, who kind of had a breakout year last year, and you took James Washington. I believe, was he a second or third rounder at Oklahoma State a couple years back as well. So where Pittsburgh has struggled is maybe in the tight end position. I don't think he's a tight end, which you already mentioned, but I wonder if they play him more inside. A big body guy, he can do the dirty work too, and he's a hell of a blocker. He really likes to hit you in the mouth and run you over. So I love that pick. But you're right. Everywhere else, it was kind of interesting. Anthony McFarland Jr., I know a lot of people like his speed out of Maryland, a smaller running back. James Conner isn't staying healthy, but they took Ben Snell, I believe, last year out of Kentucky, and he had some pretty good numbers coming out of college. He just didn't really get the touches. So if you're really going to answer that running back, depth and, what the situation is, I would have hit it earlier. But you're right. I think quarterback, they could have picked one up. I think my thinking was, at least, and we saw, it obviously didn't end up happening, is Jameis Winston. I think a lot of people thought he would come in, be the backup to Big Ben. If Big Ben gets injured, that's a pretty solid guy filling the hole there, but he ends up signing with the Saints. So I wonder if that's a situation. Cam Newton is waiting to see what happens to Big Ben, because we know it's not Duck Hodges, and we know it's not Mason Rudolph, who's going to be the heir apparent to Big Ben. So I actually gave him a higher draft grade. I don't know why I gave him a B for some reason. I'm looking at my notes here, but I just think the Claypool kind of fits their offense a little bit, and they didn't have too many holes. This is a solid team, a really good defense that's just going to continue to get better. We saw, I know we've talked about the Micah Fitzpatrick trade here and there. Once he got there, their defense, got a little bit better, and TJ Watt is a hell of a player. So we'll see how this team looks moving forward. It's all really going to depend on the health of Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah, I think it really does, and I think, but if he does stay healthy, I think, man, I really love the dude Claypool, man. The Pittsburgh Steelers have a really good track record of hitting on receivers. So if there was any questions about him, they've got the track record to prove that they know what they're doing there. Let's get to some questions now. Out of all 8 of these teams, Nolan, who got the biggest steal out of all of them?
It's really tough. I think a lot of it fits on team need and stuff like that. But I think personally, I'm going to go with the Vikings, and I am going to say Justin Jefferson. I think the Vikings, just the fact they didn't have him on their board, they thought he was going to go earlier than that. I think so did we. I believe when we did our mock, what did we have him going to Denver? We had him going pretty early, and we had Jalen Reagor going there at 21 into the Eagles. I'm guessing the Vikings didn't think Reagor would be the guy going before Justin Jefferson. It ends up happening. He's the guy who fills, a hole there. So you have Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson, 2 terrific route runners. Jefferson's the guy who caught 111 passes in college and a pass-heavy offense. Kirk Cousins is going to love to have that. I was worried. I was really worried if they had Thielen, Olabisi Johnson, and Tajay Sharp as their 3 wide receivers going into this season. They hit on Justin Jefferson. So it's crazy to think, hey, that's the biggest steal because he's a first rounder. But I think, every teams are just shocked he was there.
Yeah, I love that one too. And you know how I like Justin Jefferson. I will go with a late rounder though. I'm going to go with the guy we were talking about off the top, Donovan Peoples-Jones to the Cleveland Browns. I thought that was just such an awesome one. And look, I'm not going to assassinate the guy's character, but there has been some stuff going on always, seemingly throughout his entire career with Odell Beckham Jr., despite his immense talent. There's been issues here and there. And also, to be fair to him, if the Browns don't look like they're fulfilling the potential, I could see him walking out the door. And then Donovan Peoples-Jones is a great guy to have there. And as long as he has some time to develop and work on his inconsistencies, then I think that's a great pick there. Now, who made the biggest mistake, only including obviously these teams?
I think it is the Green Bay Packers, and it's not Jordan Love because I know we already talked about that. That's more a move for the future. I think the Packers understand that, and hopefully Aaron Rodgers does as well. It's the second rounder, A.J. Dillon. And the reason for that is you're solid in the running back department. Aaron Jones is an underrated player. He was, I think he finished second or third in touchdowns behind Derrick Henry. And so what he can do is, he's solid on the football field, a slashy runner, and he can catch too. Right? A.J. Dillon can't. So why would you be taking away carries from Aaron Jones unless Matt LaFleur thinks this offense moving forward is going to be smash mouth what the Titans did when LaFleur was the OC? When you have Aaron Rodgers, what's the point of doing that? So that to me was just question mark all over the board. If they took a running back there who was better than Dillon, that could help, out of the backfield passing wise. Okay. But for me, it was just a head scratcher for sure.
Yeah, I mean, easy one for me, Nolan. It's Cole Kmet. Again, nothing personal. I just don't think like the amount of moves you could have made there instead and improved your team. It was a big mistake. Now, for who improved their season the most? Who improved their team the most going into next season? There's a lot, but like who's going to have a better 2020?
It's tough. I like what the Lions did. I think it depends on Matt Stafford's health. I'll say the Baltimore Ravens. I just think because the 14-2 team, you have the MVP, and you hit on some of the holes that they had. They hit receiver, they hit on Patrick Queen, they add another running back to an already potent running attack. So that for me is the team that improved the most. And it's crazy to think, how did a 14-2 team improve even more? They're going to be really scary on offense. And their defense has improved immensely as well. Calais Campbell, a leader in the locker room there, that'll help out a ton. So I like what the Lions did. I do like a lot what the Browns did. But for me, I'll go the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, I would say the Baltimore Ravens did an excellent job. Tough to improve, though, on 14-2. And for that reason, I will go with you guys. The Minnesota Vikings, I think that's pretty much your division to lose at this point, realistically. Now, just to round it off, the final question for this one is, will Aaron Rodgers leave before the end of his contract, which ends in 2023? I'm going to just start off by saying I think he's gone in 2 years. I think he's gone. I think he's out of there. Hopefully, I heard this. Please, God, don't let this happen. I won't even be able to watch football if he comes to the Chicago Bears. Please, I don't care how good he is. I don't want him there. Don't do it.
It might happen. Hey, they need a quarterback, a big city guy. He likes hanging out with celebrities and dating celebrities. So it fits the script there in Chicago and Beantown. But no, that would be wild if that ended up happening. It's just weird. It just seems like he's meant to stay in Green Bay forever. You know what? It's going to depend on how their record ends up, holding up over the next few years. They miss the playoffs next year. We could see him, leaving soon, right? He's still got a phenomenal arm. He's still a really smart player. I can't give out teams right now where I could see him going to, but it's all going to depend what Matt LaFleur wants to do. Because, after a year like that, reaching the NFC Championship, I'm assuming he's going to be the coach there for, quite a while. So if they start missing the playoffs or start having some disappointing seasons, I think it's going to be earlier than we think because they're going to want to start building the project of Jordan Love. So I'll say I think he's gone in 2022 as well.
Okay. All right. There you have it. Aaron Rodgers out of town, no longer a cheesehead. He's going to be real pissed. I don't think it's overblown. I think he's probably real mad about this whole draft, but either way, we'll end it on that note. Nolan, you have yourself a great one, and we'll be back for the AFC and NFC East when we return tomorrow. Thanks, guys.